This project explores how design can be used to overcome stigma to develop sexual pleasure products that ooze playfulness and encourage body exploration and confidence. The World Health Organization defines sexual pleasure as a human right, and that sexual health is not merely the absence of disease, dysfunction, or infirmity, but the physical, emotional, and social well-being in relation to sexuality, with the possibility of having pleasurable and safe sex experiences. Unfortunately, this is not yet our reality. Sexual identity and activity are still stigmatized. Research in this field is severely limited to the experiences of cisgendered heterosexual people, often couples. This literature gap affects the project's direction, and scope has been narrowed toward a cisgender heterosexual woman's identity and generally towards people with clitoral anatomy. It must be noted that this in no way purports to portray a universal experience of womanhood. It is hoped by acknowledging how restrictive heteronormativity can be that the outcomes may be accessible to a broader audience. The physiological benefits of sexual activity and orgasm are many, as it promotes the release of endorphins, the brain's opiate-like neurotransmitters. But statistically speaking, cis women are missing out. They aren't masturbating. Across our lifespan at every age, men masturbate more regularly than women, beginning at 14 years, where over 60% of boys have tried compared to 43% of girls. For men, this percentage of self-discovery steadily increases each year, while flatlining for women. At 18 to 25, the target demographic of this project, 65% of young men masturbate regularly compared to 30% of young women. A third of women never masturbate at all, and this percentage only grows. Unfortunately, pleasure isn't found elsewhere in lieu of masturbation, as, statistically speaking, cis women aren't coming from heterosexual intercourse either, with frequency of orgasm for men occurring 95% of the time compared to 65% for women. This issue cannot be dismissed as inherently physiological, as in same-sex relationships, women orgasm on par with bisexual and gay men. According to the 2013 paper Did You Come?, lack of orgasm is the first and second most common sexual complaint in medical sex settings, as it causes stress and worry for seemingly, quote, being unable to function correctly. In the 2015 paper Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski, she breaks down the wildly incorrect but still rampant misconception of a malfunctioning sexuality. Historically, Western science and medicine viewed women's sexuality as men's sexuality light. Quote, basically the same but not quite as good, with it just sort of assumed that since men have orgasms during penis and vagina sex, women should too. And if they don't, they're broken. Further unsettling research found that having sex for the first time validates a young man's sense of masculinity, yet young women feel more dissatisfied with themselves. Researchers speculate that young women are grappling with having to contend with a history that valued them for virginity and performative pressure. This brings us to the current trend of wellness, which advocates for sexual pleasure as a necessary part of self-care and self-love. This is obviously welcome, but delivery must be nuanced. Contemporary research in sex education calls for incorporating a suggestion of pleasure rather than pushing the heteronormative raunch culture, as phrased by Ariel Levy, that equates hyper-performative sexuality with pleasure as empowerment. Research found this placed unnecessary pressure on young women and creates shame for an inability to perform. Further discussion of this literature is found in the pleasure imperative section of my thesis, but concisely, this establishes the context of the proposed design opportunity. The primary field of practice for this project is Design for Sexual Health Innovation, or DASHI, which utilises design thinking with the rigour of scientific method researchers to tackle taboo issues like women's masturbation. The secondary field of practice underpinning this project is sensory design, which is the exploration of multisensory stimulation in unison to result in a pleasurable, harmonious overall interaction for a more meaningful user experience. This area of opportunity became apparent through reviewing the sex toy market, which, theoretically, should be about heightening pleasure. Unfortunately, the Western history of sex toys has been more concerned with the moral panic of sexuality and solely designed for the gratification of the white, cis, heterosexual male, rather than designing objects that are body safe and generally pleasurable for people with clitorises. Whilst the 21st century has seen a shift towards women-friendly products, these are reduced to a simplified aesthetic genre. Key DASHI practitioner Judith Glover characterises these as small clitoral-focused devices, with the aesthetics mimicking simple appliances to promote suggestions of health. This styling dominates today. This graph visualises sex toys that have received recent publicity for being progressive, innovative, or designerly. There is minimal form variation, and recent efforts to promote non-binary or ungendered offerings are simply the same genital-centric products coloured white. This demonstrates an opportunity to design a product which aesthetically suggests fun. Multiple precedents from both fields of practices are discussed in the thesis, but two which are key are Teresa Berger's Beyond Taste Crockery and Jin John's Sensory Cutlery Collection. Two distinct approaches to dining each illustrate the potential of playing with sensory cues. The dual, lolly-like finishes of the cutlery entices the user, and the strange, otherworldly sensations of Berger's work creates a theatrical, immersive experience. Pleasure is found throughout the process of eating rather than deriving satisfaction from finishing. The ritualistic sensorial design elements heighten the experience playfully. It is the intent of this project to develop a similar atmospheric experience to solo sex. It should be noted that a type of fun product genre does exist in sex toy design, but it is achieved with novelty, fantasy, or saturating cuteness. Further discussion of these genres is found in the Field of Practice chapter, but essentially I reason there is space for playful design between a realistic dragon penis, a hot fuchsia rabbit, or a pastel pink amorphous vibrator. Importantly, the sex toys depicted so far are all genital focused, yet sexual arousal is more than a physiological response to pinpointed stimulation. Contemporary understanding of sexual desire subscribes to the dual mode model from the Kinsey Institute, with the sexual response mechanism in our brain consisting of a pair of universal components, a sexual accelerator and sexual brakes, which respond to broad categories of sexual stimuli, including genital stimulation, visual stimulation, and emotional context. The sensitivity of each component is individually unique. Research shows that the best method for achieving an orgasm is to simply practice regularly with the broader body exploration and focused clitoral stimulation. But this requires overcoming internalized contextual barriers as well as tangible immediate ones. While it's beyond scope to undo eras of misogyny, design can be used to minimize potential barriers and design desire to help develop an accelerating emotional context. This brainstorm hybridized journey map shows the selected areas of opportunity from reviewing potential pain points that may inhibit the choice to masturbate. Then, untapped areas of sensory play within popular sex toy offerings were identified, establishing the proposed outcomes, which are an object to establish the atmosphere, possibly in the form of a light, which can be used to warm lube and massaging oil, a dildo or massager for slow body exploration in conjunction with a heat bag used to comfortably warm it, while not requiring it to be removed from the bedroom for discretion, an external vibrator, rumbly, not buzzy, with an ease of use that satisfies the universal design principles. This collection is primarily for solo use, aiming for a less pressured, more realistic experience of body exploration compared to a traditional toy. The intended impact of the project is to help build self-agency, body knowledge, and foster confidence and self-esteem. The outcomes must satisfy the design criteria of not encouraging shame, facilitating play and body positivity, must appear playful and pleasurable in form, and must be body safe. As a Dashi project, user-centered co-design methods would be employed. However, ethical limitations prohibit this. Alternative methods of validation via interviews with experts, triangulation of academic literature, and autoethnographic research will be in place of traditional user testing. Autoethnographic research will only be employed when the former two options are not able to conclusively direct a design decision, as this outcome involves self-reflection and personal narrative, pivoting the project towards a critical design outcome. A Dashi methodology will be followed in every other capacity. An example of data triangulation to validate is the construction of personas to conceptualize the target audience, which will validate later chapters. Principles from universal design will guide the process, specifically equitable use, which demands usefulness to people with diverse abilities, and with an equivalent or identical means of use for all users, so as to avoid segregating or stigmatizing. And simple and intuitive use. Designed for intimate settings, ease of use must be almost unconscious and avoid causing pain. Buttons placed on the vibrators are the most common complaint, as is excess hand vibration. Avoiding this will be achieved through prototyped iterations. These principles will be applied in conjunction with emotional design principles, specifically those relevant to the initial visceral response, which refers to the user's immediate feelings. These are of key importance in overcoming discomfort or an instinctual unwillingness to engage, to hopefully build a positive experience. Parallel prototyping, a method that involves testing many ideas simultaneously, is proposed for prototyping, as testing a wider range of early experiments finds the best solutions faster and helps to navigate Melbourne's COVID-19 lockdowns. Developing a single iterative idea has been proven unachievable, with it being extremely difficult to gather materials for early sensory experiments. Thus, adapting and trying other ideas has been necessary to progress. Once the strongest concept has been found, an iterative prototyping method to refine will be used. Very early experiments into the artifact form and sensory stimulation were initiated, including concept viability trialled with pre-existing products, early sketching over simple forms, and experiments with balloons to start exploring the aesthetic and functional possibilities, a product teardown to understand the technical components of the vibrator, and then extremely lo-fi prototypes made to begin understanding the relationship between silicon and vibration, though better motors are necessary for accuracy. Further insight into these tests can be found in the methods chapter. Moving forward, the first step is undertaking sensation preference testing, as the vibrator's function is crucial to the overall success, and the vibrator's form is dictated by tech components. Then, a thorough investigation into the form's materiality and functionality across all proposed objects can begin in unison to produce an aesthetically cohesive collection that promotes the project's intent of a playful, holistic, non-orgasm-centric sexual pleasure experience.